You spend the first 23 years of your life believing wealth belongs to people born lucky enough to inherit Earth before everyone else gets pushed into orbit. Your apartment hangs inside the lower industrial ring of New Jakarta Station, one of the overcrowded labor colonies rotating above Earth like a rusting machine nobody bothers repairing anymore. 12 million people live inside the station, and most never see sunlight directly. They work freight routes, oxygen refineries, algae farms, waste reclamation systems, and reactor maintenance for corporations that own more territory than governments ever did. You work cargo authentication on Dock Ring 16, spending 12-hour shifts scanning manifests while automated drones move containers worth more than your district's annual income. Most nights you sit alone inside a reinforced booth listening to freighter captains complain about tariffs imposed by executives who have never touched a cargo crate themselves. You know exactly how the system works. Earth owns politics. Mars owns manufacturing. The outer colonies own raw materials. And the 12 dynastic families controlling interplanetary trade own everything else. People like you exist beneath them. Then at exactly 2:14 in the morning, your terminal flashes with a priority Omega transmission. Biometric verified. Inheritance transfer pending. You assume immediately it's a scam because nobody on Dock Ring 16 receives Omega-level communications. Those channels belong to military command, sovereign corporations, and planetary governors. You almost delete the file without opening it. Then the balance sheet loads. Your screen freezes for 6 full seconds trying to process the numbers. 42 quadrillion solar credits. Majority ownership across 87 shipping fleets. Mining rights throughout the Titan Belt. Defense contracts. Terraforming investments. Political influence indexes attached to 14 colonial governments. The largest private financial structure in human civilization now belongs to you. Then one final line appears beneath the numbers. Elias Vault is dead. You are the sole successor. Your pulse becomes painful. Everyone knows the name Elias Vault. He isn't just rich. He is the economic gravity holding half the solar system together. Somewhere inside every major transaction, Vault-owned systems quietly take their percentage. Freight pricing. Food transportation. Atmospheric production. Military logistics. People joke governments ask permission before changing tax laws affecting him. And now he's dead. 3 minutes later, station security surrounds your booth. Not local officers. Corporate tactical units in black armor carrying military-grade pulse rifles with neural targeting implants glowing behind their ears. They seal the entire docking corridor before the commander finally speaks. Remain calm, he says. Your life expectancy has changed significantly. That sentence tells you more than any briefing ever could. Nobody inherits power like this peacefully. Within 20 minutes you're aboard a secured transport shuttle leaving Dock Ring 16 while your old life disappears behind reinforced blast doors forever. No chance to contact friends. No opportunity to process reality. Your entire existence erased by one dead billionaire. The briefing begins during transit. Officially, Elias Vault died aboard a private station orbiting Europa from catastrophic neurological failure. Unofficially, every intelligence agency in the solar system suspects assassination. The woman leading security introduces herself as Director Celine Ward, former military intelligence and current executive security chief for the Vault Empire. You finally ask the obvious question. Why me? Ward slides another file across the table. Because your grandfather believed dynasties become weak when heirs grow up protected. You almost laugh. So he leaves me in a cargo station? Ward studies you carefully before answering. He left you invisible. Then the shuttle alarms suddenly explode red. The escort frigate beside your transport erupts silently against the darkness of space. No warning. No communication. Just instant destruction scattering molten debris across vacuum. Ward reacts immediately. Engine burn now. The pilot accelerates hard enough to crush your chest into the restraints while long-range scans identify 3 stealth fighters approaching from behind the debris field. Professional attack pattern. Not pirates. Corporate military. Ward hands you a pistol without hesitation. You stare at it in disbelief. I scan cargo manifests for a living. She doesn't blink. You inherited enemies too. Railgun fire flashes past the hull close enough to shake the cabin violently. One escort drone disappears instantly under missile impact while another deliberately rams an attacking fighter to protect the shuttle. And suddenly you realize people are already dying because your name appeared on an inheritance file. That thought never leaves you afterward. You survive only because Earth Defense Command intercepts the attackers before they finish the assault. Officially, nobody claims responsibility. Unofficially, everyone knows rival dynasties are already testing weaknesses. By the time you arrive inside the Vault Citadel above New Manhattan, financial wars are spreading across the system. The Citadel itself barely feels human. 300 floors suspended above the Atlantic inside a vertical city reserved for executives, diplomats, military advisors, and people wealthy enough to purchase distance from normal civilization. Private gardens grow beneath artificial suns. Autonomous security drones patrol every corridor continuously. Entire intelligence divisions monitor interplanetary markets in real time. You spend your first week drowning in information. Elias Vault didn't simply own corporations. He owned dependencies. 52% of Martian oxygen transport. 30% of lunar defense manufacturing. Agricultural systems feeding outer colonies near Jupiter. Private fleets larger than some planetary navies. The solar economy isn't competitive anymore. It's interconnected survival managed by people rich enough to shape civilizations quietly. And now those systems answer to you. Every morning begins with crisis briefings. A mining rebellion on Titan threatens helium exports. Earth legislators demand emergency antitrust seizures against Vault Holdings. Rival dynasties freeze medical shipments moving toward Callisto colonies trying to pressure negotiations. You realize quickly that wealth at this level stops resembling luxury. It becomes infrastructure. Power. Leverage over survival itself. During your second month, Celine Ward teaches you the first real rule of dynastic economics while reviewing military shipping contracts beside you. Poor people think billionaires buy cars, she says calmly. Real wealth controls consequences. That sentence explains the solar system better than any political education ever could. At first you try operating morally. That instinct nearly destroys everything. A Martian labor coalition requests emergency wage protections against manufacturing exploitation, and your advisors recommend rejecting the proposal immediately because profit margins during expansion cycles remain politically essential. You override them anyway. 3 weeks later, rival corporations manipulate the increased labor costs into a market panic severe enough to trigger riots across 2 orbital manufacturing sectors. 26 people die during the supply shortages caused by your decision. Ward confronts you afterward without sympathy. You think morality protects people, she says coldly. At this level, incompetence kills faster. That realization changes you slowly. The dangerous part is how reasonable ruthless decisions begin sounding once millions of lives depend on stability. You freeze dissident unions because freight efficiency matters more during famine cycles near Saturn. You manipulate market prices intentionally to bankrupt smaller competitors before they threaten core logistics networks. Every decision feels terrible initially. Then necessary. Then strategic. Years pass. Your empire expands because weakness attracts predators while strength attracts obedience. Rival families stop viewing you as an accidental heir and start treating you like a sovereign power. Colonial governors request meetings personally now. Military commanders negotiate fleet movement through your offices before consulting legislatures. You become wealthy enough that entire planetary elections shift depending on whether your trade networks support local economies publicly or not. Eventually the line disappears completely. The first time you order someone killed directly happens during your 4th year controlling the empire. Not emotionally. Strategically. A corporate executive named Adrian Vale orchestrates coordinated sabotage against Vault agricultural stations orbiting Venus, putting 43,000 colonists at risk of starvation if the attacks continue. Your advisor's present options. Legal arbitration takes years. Military retaliation risks interplanetary conflict. Economic sanctions hurt civilians first. Celine Ward recommends something simpler. Remove him quietly. You hate how quickly the logic makes sense. Adrian Vale dies during a shuttle malfunction above Pacific orbital lanes 2 weeks later. Official accident. Professionally executed. The sabotage stops immediately afterward. Thousands survive because one man disappears. That's when you finally understand your grandfather. Power doesn't corrupt people instantly. It trains them. One necessary compromise at a time. Then the transmission arrives from Europa. Priority Black. Unauthorized excavation teams operating beneath old vault mining sectors discover something hidden intentionally by Elias Vault 31 years earlier. The attached file contains only coordinates and one sentence. If they find the archive, the system collapses. You travel personally because hidden information becomes dangerous once dynasties panic. The archive sits beneath frozen tunnels guarded by automated defense systems older than you are, with neural authorization locks tied directly to Elias Vault's genetic line. Your line. Inside, you discover the real foundation of the empire. Not innovation. Not genius. Manipulation. For nearly 40 years, the 12 ruling dynasties secretly coordinated economic crises intentionally. Controlled shortages. Manufactured recessions. Political destabilization campaigns designed to eliminate independent competitors and increase dependence on centralized corporate systems. Wars prolonged strategically because conflict increased resource consolidation. Colonies abandoned once profitability dropped below acceptable projections. Entire civilizations shaped deliberately by people wealthy enough to profit from instability itself. You sit alone watching private recordings of your grandfather explaining everything calmly. The public requires the illusion of competition, one recording says. Order survives through controlled inequality. You stop the playback halfway through because anger becomes physically overwhelming. Everything you defended. Everything you justified. Built on engineered suffering. Celine Ward eventually finds you sitting beside the archive servers. You knew, you whisper. Yes. How many people died building this? She pauses before answering. Enough that nobody inside the system can expose it safely anymore. That's the real trap. The dynasties became too large to destroy. Because if the archives go public, financial systems collapse immediately. Supply chains fail. Banking structures implode. Resource wars ignite between dependent colonies already struggling economically. Billions suffer. But if you bury the truth, the machine continues forever. You spend 3 days in Europa orbit trying to decide which version of humanity deserves survival more. The people living comfortably inside lies or the people who deserve truth regardless of consequences. In the end, you compromise. Which is exactly how systems like this survive. You leak fragments carefully. Enough to trigger investigations. Enough to weaken rival dynasties. Enough to fracture the illusion of untouchable corporate authority without collapsing civilization completely. But the markets panic anyway. Mars erupts into labor revolts within weeks. Lunar banking coalitions freeze transactions. Private military fleets reposition around key trade corridors preparing for conflict. And suddenly you become the most dangerous man in the solar system. Not because of your wealth. Because now everyone knows you might destroy the machine instead of protecting it. Assassination attempts multiply immediately afterward. Cyber attacks. Internal betrayals. Executives inside your own empire quietly recalculating loyalty probabilities. One night Celine Ward approaches you inside the citadel while Earth glows beneath the windows like burning circuitry. You could still stabilize this, she says quietly. Release a statement. Reassure the markets. You stare out at the planet below. You mean reassure the people exploiting them? Ward's expression never changes. I mean prevent millions from starving during systemic collapse. That's the impossible truth about power. The villains always understand consequences better than idealists do. Then the final message arrives. Encrypted. Biometric locked. Recorded by Elias Vault 6 hours before his death. You open it alone. For the first time, your grandfather looks human. Old. Exhausted. If you are watching this, he says quietly, then you discovered the truth eventually. Good. That means you are dangerous enough to survive what comes next. A star map appears behind him. Deep space signals. Unknown fleet movements beyond Pluto. Non-human trajectories entering the solar system slowly over decades. And suddenly everything changes. The system was never built to make us rich, your grandfather says calmly. It was built because something worse is coming. You stare at the screen unable to breathe. Every manipulation. Every engineered crisis. Every consolidation of power. Preparation. Then the final sentence arrives like a death sentence for humanity itself. You are no longer the richest man in the solar system. At that exact moment emergency alerts flood your terminal. Outer defense stations destroyed near Neptune. Communications blackout spreading across mining colonies. Military fleets mobilizing without government authorization. And somewhere beyond the edge of mapped human territory, something enormous keeps moving toward civilization while the empire you inherited begins tearing itself apart from within.